So Gerard, you've recently been made permanent leader of UKIP. To many people who haven't been following UKIP closely, you seem to just come from nowhere. I know you're going to be probably feel offended by that, but can you tell us, just tell us your background with UKIP?
Well, actually, I was a founder member of UKIP, so I've been a member of UKIP, 26 years ago we started with something called the Anti-Federalist League, and we changed the name to the UK Independence Party in 1993. So I've been in it from the start. I was elected in 2004 as an MEP, and I have had various offices. I was the spokesman on immigration, spokesman on security and defence. More latterly, I've been the spokesman on Brexit, and I have done lots of media appearances. I've done Newsnight, I've done the Daily Politics many times, but I tend to get the early morning and late night stuff as well, which is unsocial hours. So unless people are avid politics fans, they might not have seen me, but I've done quite a lot of things over the years.
I want to talk to you about your background. I want to ask you about your background. Nigel Farage appealed to the working class, but for me, he wasn't one of us. What's your background? Did you go to private school? Did you work before you got involved in politics?
Well, I hardly went to school at all if I could avoid it, but no, that's a joke. I grew up on the Isle of Dogs, Millwall. Came from a very ordinary working class background. My father worked in the Millwall docks. I went to an ordinary primary school and comprehensive school, and I started work as a bookbinder, in actual fact, long time ago. After a few years of that, I joined British Telecom. I worked for 28 years for British Telecom as a salesman. I worked my way up from the bottom, had a very good job at the end of that. I left there when aged 50 in order to take up a seat in the European Parliament in the 2004 elections. So yes, I'm one of these people that had a real life and a real job long before I got elected to anything. And of course, for the 10-12 years prior to being elected, I was working and doing politics in my own time, in the evenings or weekends. So it was a long, hard slog to actually get where I got.
What was the moment that made you change then, from working to get involved in politics? What brought you into politics?
I was always interested in current affairs from about the age of 10, and I used to watch documentaries. Because don't forget, I grew up in the Cold War when, it was a far more volatile and interesting political situation than it is now. Well, thank goodness, really. But I grew up watching all of that on the TV. I was very interested. I was never really interested in party politics. I couldn't care less who was stabbing each other in the back in Westminster. It was more about world events and what was actually happening and what was behind it all, which interested me. And I was always opposed to Britain being a member of the common market, or I should say the European Economic Community, as it was properly known. I was always opposed to that. Could always see that it wasn't going to end well, but never got involved in politics. And then back in 1992, we had something called the Treaty on European Union, which was one of the treaties, key milestone in the development of the European Union, when lots more powers were transferred from the domestic national governments to the European Union. And that included, for example, as few people even know now, Her Majesty the Queen was made a citizen of the European Union, as the treaty says, with all the duties and obligations thereof. So how can your head of state in a sovereign country be a citizen of somewhere else and obliged to obey and follow their laws? Something very wrong there. And I thought, I just got to do something about this rather than just, shout at the TV set. And I happened by chance to see a chap called Dr. Alan Sked, who'd set up something called the Anti-Federalist League, was asking for people to join. I joined. I imagined I was going to join a big organisation and put things in envelopes for him and do a bit of voluntary work, and then found out it was a very small organisation and I was elevated to the top. And that's my recipe for success in politics. Start at the top and stay there.
So you've worked, so basically you joined because of the European Union.
Yeah.
You've been involved for how many years?
Well, that's 26 years ago
26
now.
years.
Yeah. This April.
So how did it feel? So your whole commitment has been to tackle the European Union. How did it feel with the Brexit vote?
Well, actually, when we set the party up back in 1993, it was always intended that it would become a force in national politics and it would have a full manifesto of policies, because we knew this right away. A one-issue party will not appeal to the voters because there are too many other problems out there that concern them as well. So we always had a manifesto. We were never a pressure group. People keep saying this, people who weren't there at the time.
Well, a lot of people wouldn't even know UKIP's been around for 26 years.
I know, but you see, the thing is, the reason that we have a reputation and a name and a brand is because 26 years of relentless effort by thousands and thousands of volunteers, some of them are no longer with us, putting leaflets through doors, running in council elections, by-elections, general elections. You don't get a brand name like that and an identity overnight. You can't buy that unless you spend tens of millions on advertising. You have to build that up the hard way, step by step. And that's what our members did over those years, and that's why we are where we are today, albeit in a damaged position, as I'll freely acknowledge.
UKIP has a long and complex issue with its leaders, from Nigel Farage stepping down to becoming leader again, to the most recent controversy with your previous leader, I forget his name, like most people in the country did, was it Henry Bolton?
That was it.
Yeah, over another scandal. What will make you different? What will make you remembered?
Do you mean amongst the membership, or
amongst membership, amongst the public who after I'm sitting here, I don't know who the last 4 leaders. I think they had 5 leaders in the last couple of years. I couldn't name them.
Well, Nigel did tend to overshadow people because he's a very big personality, a very big character, and he was very good at what he did. Nigel was excellent at being the public face of UKIP, but mostly, of Brexit and the campaign to leave, and he did a fantastic job in the referendum. It was UKIP that brought about that referendum. It was UKIP boots on the ground that won it, and it was Nigel's face in the media and on the TV. And don't forget, even David Cameron wouldn't debate with him on this. He wouldn't be on the same platform with him at the same time because he knew he'd lose the argument. So Nigel is a very powerful presence and figure, not just in UKIP, but in national consciousness because of that. So it's very difficult for people to come up behind him. And we don't have the big business behind us. We don't have the trade unions. All we've got is our members, a few large donors, but we have to scrimp and scrape for every penny that we actually spend. We can't sell people knighthoods. We can't sell people peerages because we're never going to be in a position to deliver them, and we wouldn't want to do it anyway. But other parties have got that kind of patronage, power and money. So our job is incredibly difficult, made all the more difficult by our first past the post electoral system. If we were on a continent under a PR system in Germany or Sweden or somewhere like that, then UKIP would have 100, 150 MPs, certainly. But we're not in that position. So you're asking me what makes me different. I've got one big quality, I think, and that is I'm very persistent and I am very obstinate. So when I take on a job, I actually see it through to the end, to the best of my abilities. Now, that's the reason, I think, one of the reasons why our members have asked me to, supported me to become the leader, because they know they can trust me. When I volunteered for this, I didn't think anybody else could actually pull the party round. And that wasn't because I felt, I'm a political genius or something. It was because I knew I couldn't do this without the membership, and the membership trusted me to do it and would put me in this position out of confidence and trust. And now my job is to build on that over the next 12 months and actually put UKIP in a stronger place than it was when I started.
What do you want to achieve as UKIP leader?
Well, the first thing that I needed to achieve, I've done, I'm very pleased to say, which is to stop the party going under. I knew things were bad when I took over from Bolton on the 17th of February. I didn't know how bad until a couple of days later when I went to the head office. We were about to go into the red. We were about to become insolvent, and the party would have had to close. Now, I managed to pull that round by, I knew that we needed £100,000 so that we could pay our creditors and we could stay, put ourselves in the black. I asked our members for £100,000 in order to enable us to do that. I was thinking, is that going to be possible? And they amazed me with their generosity and gave us £300,000. It was incredible.
Wow.
And that money poured in. And not only did the money pour in, the confidence and the morale in the party lifted amongst the ordinary members, amongst the branch officers, and now they're back to being a fighting force.
In 2018, we had 4 successful terrorist attacks last year. What I want to know is, previous leaders, you worked with them, previous leaders of UKIP, what was their knowledge on Islam? Do you know if any of them had read the Quran, if any of them studied the life of Muhammad? What did they know about Islam? Were they reluctant to talk about Islam because of their lack of knowledge on it?
I think that the only previous leader that knew anything about it was Lord Pearson, Malcolm Pearson, who had an interest in it. And obviously we discussed it, and I was under him, I was also the immigration spokesman, and I talked about these things. So we had a rapport on that, although he didn't really want to be leader, and he stepped down after, I think it was less than a year. The way I got interested in it was I was the security and defence spokesman back in 2005 when the bombs went off on the tubes and the buses in London. And of course I already knew a fair bit about Islam, but not in any great detail. And I thought, well, I must try to understand better the motivation for these type of attacks and terrorism and why they do them. So I had good fortune to meet a chap who was an ex-Sharia lawyer who had given up Islam and converted to something else. And I said to him, would you write me a pamphlet which explains these doctrines so that we can understand them better? And he agreed, and we published this pamphlet, and it was called a Muslim Charter of Understanding, and it was with all of these things laid out, explaining the rules, the verses that made all this justifiable in certain people's minds, and asking them to actually abandon those verses, and a little affirmation at the back which has 5 points on it which no reasonable person could possibly object to, saying, you know, things like we believe in the equality of people, freedom of religion, the right to give up a religion, non-violence and all this. And I have been attacked in the media for actually publishing that little affirmation.
Do you know that little booklet? That's one of the first things just so you know, when I started in 2009, when I started talking about Islam, it's one of the first things I come across.
Yeah, well,
in the UK, because I started searching who's talking about it. This massive issue, because it was brought home in Luton. And one of the first things I read that was a booklet wrote in conjunction with Sam Solomon.
That's right, yeah.
I remember it.
And he researched it, and between us we devised the affirmation at the end, because we said, look, these are all things are bad. Let's ask them to give it up, give these particular verses up, so they're no longer applicable in the 20th, 21st century.
Request.
And let's believe in these 5 very simple things that nobody could possibly object to. And I have been attacked on that so many times in the media when I'm interviewed that I now carry it around in my wallet so that I can get it out and quote them to them and say, which part of that do you disagree with? And how am I attacking Muslims when I ask people to actually sign up to those kind of what would be described as universal values amongst any civilized person and society? That was the first thing I did, and I tried to learn more and more about the ideology, because it is an ideology, and this is the thing we've got to understand. It's an ideology that people choose to believe in. It's not nothing to do with race. Muslims come from all different countries, all different ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds. It's an ideology, and if you believe in an ideology, you make that choice. You may have been brought up in it, but when you're an adult, you have a choice to believe in it or not believe in it, and therefore it is fair game to be attacked in the same way that, or critiqued in the way that any other ideology can be criticised and examined and analysed. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. So why should you pretend that you do, or you find that it's acceptable if you don't find it acceptable? So the more that I've learnt about it, and the more that I've learnt about it, the founder of the religion, Muhammad, the more I am appalled. I really am appalled that this ideology, this way of thinking, can actually have gained ground in modern civilised countries.
Did it scare you?
Yes,
it scare you because when I started in 2009, and it terrified me. The more I found out, the more I researched, the more I learned that I thought, this is here. What are we going to do?
Exactly. Yeah, it does terrify me, because if it goes on in Arabia or Pakistan or Bengal, that's all right. I'm not going there. I have no plans to visit. So let them get on with it. That's their country. They can make the best of it that they can. But what really frightens me, I think that I've had a privileged life. So I've grown up in peace. I've been able to get a job, earn a good living, have a peaceful life, never had to fight a war, raised a family. And now I'm at the age, I'm 64, and I think, had a great life. What's future generations' life going to be like? Are we going to live in a country where they're frightened to talk about ideology, where they have this religion and this belief system imposed upon them and they have to submit to it? And we know, because it's factual, the more believers in this ideology there are in a society, the more they impose their will on that society and make it submit, because that's what the word says. That's what Islam means, doesn't it? Submission to the will of Allah. Well, my view is, oh really? So who's deciding what the will of Allah is? It's a chap called Muhammad who's been dead for 1400 years. So that's why I refused to call it Islam. Well, I do refer to it as that, but really what it is the cult of Muhammad. It is a cult centred around this man, this person that's been dead for such a long time. There's nothing wrong with cults like that if they are benevolent. You could argue that Christianity is a cult around Jesus. Well, Jesus was a nice chap, didn't want to do anybody any harm. And if you follow his teachings, you won't do anybody any harm. Same could be said for Buddha. And I'm sure there are other religious innovators out there where you could apply that critique to. But this chap wasn't nice, he wasn't pleasant, and the results of his teachings are very unpleasant in the modern world. So in my view, we have to be able to say what we like about it in our country where we have free speech, or supposed to have free speech. And everybody has a duty to do it. I feel that I've got the duty to do it. I feel very sorry actually for younger people, and by younger people I mean anybody of working age, Because if they say what they believe, now everything is on the internet, it's on Facebook, or somebody records it and puts it up, and they want to go for a job, and somebody Googles them in, oh, what does Fred Bloggs think about this? Oh dear, he's got some controversial view. We can't employ him. He might upset some of our employees. We might have people banging on our doors and protesting outside. So people actually are now being cowed. They've been made to submit.
Already.
And through what? Force. Either moral force, that they're going to be criticised, that they're going to be attacked, or even fear of physical violence. And I'm not going to sit by and remain silent why that is going on in the country that I love, and after I've had the privileged life that I've had in a free country.
If you got in power as the leader of our country, what policies would you put in to address the Islamisation of Britain?
Well, the first thing we do is leave the European Union, of course, Tommy. That's key, and I could sit here and talk to you for an hour about that and how that would work. I'm sure this is not the time or place. But first of all, you can't do anything until you leave the European Union. You've got to regain control of your whole range of policies and the way that you govern your country. First thing we have to do is to have an end to mass uncontrolled immigration. We are a very physically small or geographically small island. We cannot keep introducing a minimum of, nobody knows the real figure, but it's at least 500,000 new people net every year coming into the country. It's
the size of Manchester.
Yeah, it's idiotic that we would have this kind of immigration. So we have to stop uncontrolled, unlimited immigration, and very much so from Islamic countries. We should only let people in from Islamic countries where we can be sure that they do not follow the extremist teachings of this cult, and that they are genuinely moderate people. I think that actually most Muslims probably don't know too much about what's in the Quran. They listen to their imams and they do what their imam says in the mosque on a Friday. And I think most of them probably are moderate, but we shouldn't let anybody in, whether it be a doctor or a teacher or an engineer or whatever, unless we're sure that they have moderate views and they're not going to propagate extremist views. What we should do is stop all foreign money coming from places like Saudi Arabia, Pakistan to build mosques, because we know at least half, if not 3/4 of the mosques in the UK are funded from those kind of countries. They fund the building, they fund the running, they fund the imams that come and teach. They have exported their extremist, literalist version of this religion and this cult to us, and we have to clamp down on that. And also we have to clamp down on people who propagate these messages. Did you see this Channel 5 programme? It was a good few years ago now, but it was called, I think it was called Inside Mosque or something, where they actually filmed.
Is this Green Lane Mosque?
It was in Birmingham.
I've seen so many.
Yeah.
It's Green
But
Lane
this was
Mosque
actually, I think it was Channel 5, I think, Channel 4 or Channel 5, and they aired this on the TV, and I did have a recording of it somewhere.
The police prosecuted them.
The police threatened the filmmakers.
Police threatened the filmmakers.
The filmmakers. In this mosque, there was imams saying, Jews are pigs and monkeys, descended of pigs and monkeys, and you've got to do this, and you've got to do that. And if any European had said that in a church about another race, they would have gone straight in there and arrested them straight away. What did they do? They threatened the filmmakers with racism, that they were going to charge them with race hate or whatever they were going to charge them with. And they didn't get charged, but how could you even react that way? Do you know what there is here? Can I say this to you? There is a form of racism here. If Islam had never been invented, but a white Californian had invented this 10 years ago in California, invented this cult with all the same rules, regulations, teachings, and was exporting it around the world, the elites in every European country, the media, the education system, the politicians, the police, they would want to stamp it down and crush it without mercy. But here they want to kowtow to it and submit to it because it is predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly practiced by people with brown skins. Therefore, a form of racism says you cannot say anything about it because to talk about it is racism. Now, I made this point to a group of people last week who absolutely agreed with me. What were they? It was a room full of 40 or 50 ex-Muslims with brown skins. And when I said that, they all applauded me and said, you're absolutely right. The elite in this country, the political class, the media class, are all frightened. First of all, they're terrified of being accused of racism and xenophobia. And secondly, they're terrified. They're terrified of the threat of physical violence.
That's why you think it is. So the inability and the unwillingness to talk about these issues, these serious issues, whether it be grooming, whether it be female genital mutilation, all these things that are coming out of this one community, all these problems, big problems, do you think the reason for them being unwilling to talk about them, even speak about them, or address them in any way, what would you say the reason is for that?
There's two reasons. The first one is the one I just said, which is this: because of political correctness, everyone now in a position of authority has been indoctrinated and brainwashed into they mustn't be accused of rape. Racism is actually now the worst thing you can be accused of. It's worse than being a serial killer or a paedophile, because it's like the 21st century equivalent of witchcraft. If you're accused of it, you're guilty till you're presumed guilty, until you can prove your innocence, and your life can be ruined. It's much better to be a serial killer or a bank robber or something. The penalties are much less. But if you can have your life ruined just because of an accusation like this.
Even an accusation, not even being found.
Exactly. And the people who have had their lives ruined because of these accusations of this crime. And people they've been brainwashed. And I've been reading a book recently called Easy Meat by Patrick McLaughlin, which talks about the long history of this sex slavery, it's called grooming gangs, but it's really sex slavery. And he makes this point that the reason that the local authorities, that the child services in the local authorities, the police wouldn't do anything is because they were terrified of political correctness. And even Jack Straw said something more or less the same, didn't he? So you've got that reason. And I believe the second reason is especially amongst the authorities and the police, they are terrified of violence that might erupt if they actually try to enforce the law and stop people doing things which, while they might be permissible in the Quran and the Hadith, are supposed to be against our law. And we are now in a very dangerous situation in this country where the authorities won't enforce the law.
While we're on this subject, I want to get your view on hate speech laws. I want to see what you think of the situation of free speech in Britain, currently, free speech. What do you think?
Well, I think it's becoming eroded, but and people now are being prosecuted, and the police visit them because of things that they say, which is not threatening behaviour or abusive behaviour. We had laws about that in the past. You couldn't threaten or abuse somebody because they were dealt with. Back in the Victorian times, they had laws about this. So you couldn't say that you were going to attack someone or kill somebody or insult them because we had laws against it. But now it's becoming laws about actually having opinions about things and expressing opinions about things. You are not saying that you don't like a person or disapproving of a person, but if you disapprove of a thing or a belief system or a way of life or a supposed cultural practice, then you're liable to get a visit from the police. And it's amazing, isn't it? They now can't investigate crime, burglaries. We can't come out and investigate burglary. We don't care if shops have shoplifting because it's too difficult to investigate. But they've got hundreds of officers looking at people's internet, seeing if they've said something which is not acceptable. And it's incredible. It's getting like the Soviet Union or one of these Eastern Bloc countries where they're looking what everybody says, and if you say the wrong thing, they'll go around and arrest you. It's like what North Korea is still going on, and China, where you're only allowed to have acceptable opinions. We're supposed to be living in a free country. We're supposed to have free speech. And I'm not insulting any person. I don't want to make people feel bad. I accept people the way they are. On a person-to-person basis, I try to get on with everybody. But if I think somebody's belief system is a load of baloney, I want to be free to say so. I used to have great rows when I was a trade union official. After the meetings, we'd go in the pub and we'd have violent arguments, me and the lefties, about the dangers of socialism and Marxism, Leninism, and look at the Eastern Bloc and all this. And at the end of it, we'd had a few drinks and we all parted in good company. And I never fell out with anybody over that, but we could have a row about things. And that's because we were arguing about a thing and we weren't insulting each other. And I think you've got to be able to do that in a free society. And it makes life fun anyway.
So, obviously Brexit's been a hugely important issue to you. It's a hugely important issue for our country. It doesn't look like we're quite there still yet.
Putting it mildly.
But I want to ask you, what do you see as the bigger threat? The European Union or Islam?
That's a difficult question to answer, because if we don't leave the European Union, then we can't tackle any other problem, because we won't be making the laws. They'll be decided somewhere else. And even if you want to do something, you'll be told you can't do it because it's contrary to EU law. So unless we leave the European Union, unless we re-establish ourselves as an independent, sovereign country that makes its own laws, then the rest of it doesn't matter really, because we won't have any influence over it anyway. We've got to do that first, and then the next big danger I think that we face to our way of life is what's called Islamisation, which is the growing power of this cult in order to impose its views and its way of life on everybody else. And we've seen this, for example, with ritually slaughtered meat. A large proportion now, I think at least 25%, maybe more than that, of the meat that we consume is ritually slaughtered meat. It's now in supermarkets, in school canteens, in House of Commons. And why is that? Do you want to eat meat that's where an animal's had its throat cut where it's still alive? No, but you have to, because we mustn't upset the people that will produce it, and we're frightened of what the consequences might be. It's very easy to deal with, actually. You can ban ritual slaughter on your own land, in your own country. The Germans have done it, the Danes have done it, so you can close the slaughterhouses down.
Is that something you do?
Yes. You can't ban the import of ritually slaughtered meat under WTO terms, World Trade Organization terms, so it can still be imported, but you can label it.
Yeah, which would prevent 25% of the population funding it.
So if all ritually slaughtered meat, where it was on sale, had a label on it saying this was ritually slaughtered meat, the animal had its throat cut while it was alive, or whatever. I mean, I can't buy a packet of cigars without a disgusting picture of somebody's cancer tumour on it. So why shouldn't meat be labelled so that people who don't want to buy ritually slaughtered meat will say, well, I don't want that, I'll have the unritually slaughtered meat. What's unreasonable about that? Nothing. So this is the type of thing that you could do. You were asking me what I would do, if I was Prime Minister. So what you would do is you could say it's not acceptable to have to try to impose on the British people certain practices and a way of life which is contrary to our own law and traditions and culture. And you have to tackle it head on.
Anne-Marie Waters, which was the first politician within UKIP, or actually within politics in the UK, to talk so openly about Islam. She was pretty much sidelined, and the party itself turned on her. What do you think that was? I
don't think that, first of all, the first part of your question isn't true, because actually I was talking about this going back to 2006 when I explained to you I was a security and defence spokesman, and I started looking at the Islamic ideology and started writing about it and talking about it. I wrote articles, for example, one, the myth of multiculturalism, where I pointed out in a short article why this was a completely phony doctrine that wouldn't work. And
what year was this?
This would have been 2006, 7, something like that, 7, 8. Can't
so
quite remember.
One of the first
I published it. And in fact,
the first in the UK?
Yeah, I think other people have realised this as well. One of my colleagues, an MEP, was attacked on Radio 4 because I had written this article. It was terrible that I'd said multiculturalism didn't work, and it didn't take many years afterwards till David Cameron was saying it and Mrs. Merkel was saying it. So it became common currency. So I was certainly talking about this stuff. I actually like Anne-Marie Waters. I supported Anne-Marie Waters when she was a member of the party. I supported her being a candidate. She came second in the leadership election, and of course what she should have done is accepted the will of the UKIP electors, the voters in the party. She should have said with good grace, well, thank you very much, I came second. If she'd have then stayed in the party, Henry Bolton went anyway, as we know, and she would have been in prime position to come back and run for the leadership again if she'd wanted to. What she did that was wrong, in my opinion, is that she went off in a huff. She couldn't accept that verdict. She got upset because certain people were calling her names. Well, that's politics. People call you names.
What do you think about that with the names? Because a lot of people I felt passionately when I saw a Nigel Farage article saying racists nearly took over. I thought, Joe, you know, it's so frustrated me as I see Nigel Farage, and I think he's not racist, and he's been called racist. Yeah. So he's fully aware of the tarnishing that comes from this sort of thing. And here he was doing exactly the same. What do you
Absolutely, think? I was actually annoyed. Well, I was very angry about that because I had people ringing me up that I'd known, been out tramping the streets with in the rain, putting leaflets through letterboxes in by-elections, who rang me up and said I'd just been called a Nazi and a racist, and I'm leaving the party. So I was very angry and annoyed about it because it was totally unnecessary. Because what he could have said was, well, I'm glad she lost because I don't agree with her stance or the way she approaches things. I think her ideas are wrong, and I'm glad Henry Bolton won. But he didn't do that. He called them names, and I think that was totally wrong. We lost good people, and she walked away. But she chose to walk away and set up another party. She didn't stay and tough it out, which is something I've been doing for 25 years.
I was just about to say that. So I spent, 6 years with EDL, and I felt like I was the EDL. It was a very strong part of my identity. Everything about me. 26 years within UKIP, you must feel so strong about UKIP.
First of all, I agree 100% in what UKIP stands for, which is leaving the European Union. The one thing that unites all UKIP members, whoever they are, is a belief that they have to get out of the European Union and re-establish Britain as an independent, democratic, self-governing nation. There's a very, very strong identity in UKIP of people who love their country, believe in its tradition, its history, its legal system, its political system, and actually want to live in a free country. That's one thing that unites them all together. So that bond is very strong. And what I also feel is a tremendous loyalty to the members. I've been up and down. The reason that they all supported me to be leader is because they know me, because I've been up and down the country in my own quiet way, visiting branches, talking to them, going to by-elections or whatever. So all the activists certainly know me very well. A lot of the members know me very well. And this is why they supported me to be the leader.
Okay. So when it comes to you talking about Islam, you'll probably face criticism for sitting here with me after this interview. But I'd like to ask, do you have the support of the party when you're talking about Islam? Do you have the support?
I believe, yes, the vast majority. I think don't forget we've got members up and down the country. There are others who live in nice, green, leafy shires that maybe not quite aware of the issue as they might be. So I probably will get some criticism for talking to you. There'll be other people who are very pleased that I've talked to you. Now, the fact that I talk to you doesn't mean I in any way endorse the EDL which you belong to or anything else. And I never believed you were a racist anyway. I think from your own critique of this thing, the EDL was infiltrated anyway by people. Well, that's every organisation faces that it may be infiltrated by other people. That's a threat to any small political party or movement faces. This is the problem we've always had. It's like people from the BNP or the National Front trying to infiltrate us, and we don't want them. We don't want any racists. If we find out... As
EDL wasn't racist, moving forward, as EDL wasn't a racist organisation that was talking about the issues you're talking about, would that be something at some point you'd review? Because certain organisations, look, the BNP ran its meg. The BNP were racist. The BNP were led by a National Front leader. Yeah. The BNP, that's all there. The EDL faced a huge, and I feel, like you feel about UKIP, I feel hugely, I feel a real passion for the people I met through that. Some of the best people I've met in my life. And I see them attacked. And it's changed now. The EDL now is different to when I led it. The EDL now is something very different. But they're attacked and tarnished and unfairly. And for those years when I was leading it, it was unfair. So would you always hold that?
First of all, this prescribed list was created a long time ago, and I wasn't even on the NEC, let alone in the leadership of the party to actually say whether it should be on there or not. You didn't have members, as I understand it, anyway. So it's we have people now who try to join who've been BNP members, and we say sorry. Because don't forget as well, although there are Labour and Conservative councillors who are ex-BNP members, nobody says anything. No. If UKIP allowed one BNP chap, I had a chap knocking on my door the other day wanted to join, he was ex-BNP, sorry.
You'd be destroyed by the media.
Because the mainstream media will attack us relentlessly. They will not talk about all the paedophiles in the Labour Party, for example. How many have got criminal convictions for that? 20 odd at least, as far as I know. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the sitting ex-BNP Labour councillors or Tory councillors, but they will, they will castigate and criticise us relentlessly if we let one person in. And we don't want people coming in who are going to spread that type of message. We've never been a racist party. You go to a UKIP conference or whatever, you'll meet black people there, Asian people. And I tell you what, I went to...
more diversity. In your election campaign for the European Union. Yeah. I saw more diversity in UKIP than I saw in many of the other parties.
Oh, but the funny...
but we're still getting labelled.
You see, we don't have a tick box asking them their race on when they join because we're not interested, so we can't tell you what the figures is. But the funny thing is, we've got in Dagenham in the last general election, we've got a chap, I think he's Pakistani origin, again, I don't know because I don't care, who came out and campaigns with us. He's a branch officer, and he's on the street campaigning for UKIP, and he's got people calling him racist. And I thought, well, he's a Pakistani, and he gets called. You can't win, can you? Really? So they're going to call you. They're going to call you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Now, luckily, the public are fully aware of it.
Oh yeah, I think. But this is something that you've got the mainstream media talking about things, and fewer people are listening, and you've got the general public who are increasingly know that they're being fed a line, and that the world isn't the way that they've been told it is on Channel 4 and the BBC and the radio stations.
Senior members of UKIP, leading members of UKIP, like Suzanne Evans, I've watched for years, and I'd say that she's part of the establishment-style problem, who seem to look down and sneer upon people who are scared and worried and concerned. And I've seen her call even Anne-Marie and other people like me, even myself, racist, bigots, extremists. In the famous words of Donald Trump, does UKIP need to drain its own swamp?
No, and that's not the case at all. Now, Suzanne Evans has got her own views. I get on very well with Suzanne. I think she gets on with me on a personal level. You've got a wide range of opinion in UKIP. As I said to you, the central uniting thing is that we all want to get out of the EU and live in an independent country. But then you've got a wide range of views, and you can discuss that. You can have arguments, and sometimes it's a little bit of name calling because that's that spices things up, doesn't it? Always does. We have a wide range of opinion in UKIP from different people. Suzanne Evans actually ran for leader when Paul Nuttall won. She came second, but she got so few votes she lost her deposit. Well, she did what I've done many times in elections. You put your case to the electors and they decide they don't want you. I've fought 13, 14 elections over the years. I've only won 3 of them. But that's what you do. She didn't win. So that's fair enough. That's what you do in a democracy. And she's got her points of view, and there are other counterbalancing points of view. So UKIP doesn't have a swamp. UKIP is actually a very united party, especially at the moment. So I would reject that kind of terminology. And if so long as Suzanne wants to stay and play a part, then that's great. She's quite energetic in many ways.
What are your worries for the UK if UKIP doesn't gain the momentum again they had before the Brexit referendum? What's your worries?
I feel that we are the only real opposition. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the leader of UKIP and I want it to thrive and survive. I say it because I really think it's true. You've got 2 parties who are quite different in Tory and Labour, but you actually end up in more or less the same place if you vote for them. Both of them now don't really want to leave the European Union. They'd really like to find a way of staying in. One of them says it doesn't want to control immigration at all, and the other one says it does, but doesn't actually do anything. So you still have mass uncontrolled immigration. Under both of them, you'd still have the encroachment of the state regulating more and more aspects of life. Nothing changes there. So it's like a game of musical chairs where there's one chair and 2 parties and they go around each other and it's either the Tories' turn or Labour's turn or vice versa, and nothing ever really changes. And I think it's quite dangerous now. I think we are entering very dangerous territory because you've got the Conservatives who are really the party of international business and international finance and are running the country for the benefit of big money. And you've got Labour who are actually international socialists who want to run the country on a basis of an ideology, a discredited left-wing ideology. And what's frightening about it now as it's changing is that they are backed up by the Marxist-Leninist momentum thugs. If they gain power, I think things will be quite unpleasant if there's ever actually a Corbyn Labour government. So I think we're entering quite dangerous territory now. And we have neither of those parties believe in the nation state for different reasons. None of them are going to restore Britain's independence or self-determination in a meaningful way. So UKIP is the only opposition. If you don't like it, you should vote UKIP. Now, people, we've got fantastic supporters. You go out here in Romford, you'll meet loads of people that support UKIP, believe in UKIP. And you've also got our detractors and our people who sneer at us. But if we weren't there, what would you vote for if you don't like the establishment, either Tory establishment or Labour establishment? What would you vote for? You're not about Lib Dem, are you? And these little tiny parties are never going to get anywhere because it's too difficult. We spent 26 years building up a brand, in order so that people know who we are. In fact, UKIP is one of the best known brands in the country. It's like Mars Bar or Coca-Cola. You say it and people know what it is. Well, in crude terms, that's what you have to do in politics. If people don't know who you are, they don't vote for you.
Can I ask you then, in your opinion, if we look to France, if we look to the recent election in Italy, if we look to Austria, the Austrian election, if we look to all of these elections, the fastest growing party in all of those countries is the anti-Islamisation party.
Yeah.
Why, up until now, has we not had an option in this country really that's going to address that issue?
Because I think we don't like extremism in this country and people are frightened of it, and I certainly wouldn't want to lead an extremist party. I think what we want to do is we're not going to criticise individuals. You will not find anything I've said or written in which I criticise Muslims or castigate Muslims or say anything nasty about them. I talk about the ideology, I talk about the practices, I talk about the consequences of being forced to submit to that ideology, which is the road that we're being forced down. So that's the course that I will steer, because I've got to keep UKIP on board, and I actually believe that. That's the way I approach things. I've got to keep my members on board, and I want to bring as many voters and supporters on as well. So we are lucky. I'm sorry, but this is the UK, England is different from those continental countries. They've all gone through extremist forms of politics. They've gone through terrible things, as we all know. During the Second World War, they've had communism, they've had Nazism, they've had collaborator regimes, and we've managed in this country to stay separate from all that. So we have a kind of different outlook on the world. But the trouble is, we are in danger of toleration, of being so tolerant that we tolerate ourselves out of existence. There comes a point where you have to say, we live in a culture, in a country that's worth preserving, and you have to take action to preserve it before it's too late. And what I want to do is what I want UKIP to be is, I want to make it stronger when I leave it than when I found it. And in a way, I mean, as I said, I've got the most difficult job in British politics, which is trying to rebuild trust, rebuild the membership, get the votes back on board in a system which doesn't favour us at all. And what I'm doing is raising a banner, and a banner that says, if you believe in your country, if you love your country, if you actually don't think there's anything wrong in being proud of your country, if we've got a great history to be proud of, we had a legal system, we had a political system, we had institutions that can be proud of, we had a way of life that we can be proud of, rally to that banner. Come and support us, come and vote for us, because this is what we stand for. And people should stop being forced to be ashamed of their history, because if there was a race of extraterrestrials who are observing Earth, and one day when it's all over, write the history of the Earth, I think they'll actually find something to say very complimentary about the English and the British, is that we gave far more that was good to the world than most other empires and civilizations. And on balance, we were pretty good compared to the rest of them.
Let's just finish on the fact there's an election. There's local council elections across the country on the 3rd of May. Yeah. As someone, and the majority, in fact, all of my friends, they've never voted. They don't vote. We're from a group that do not vote, because I never look and think, well, none of you are speaking for me. How would you sell yourself to get someone to go out and actually do that?
What I would say is, if you people say to me when we go out electioneering, oh, I don't do politics, and I say, well, that's unfortunate, because politics does you. You pay tax, you get benefits, you're looking for a council house, you do it. They control that. The people in power control that. So if you want to have a say over it, then you should vote. And if you believe in something, if you can't find a party you believe in, well, don't vote. But if there's one running in your area, that's something that saying things that you believe in, you vote for them, because otherwise they're volunteers. If you don't vote for them, the next time around they're going to say, well, why am I bothering doing this? There's no point. I won't bother. People don't care. You've got to care and elect that volunteer to a position where they can actually speak up for you. And this is what's happening in the local election now on the 3rd of May. We went from having no candidates. The party could have disappeared in March. Instead of that...
Because it was total collapse.
It was
collapse.
Well, in the general election, it wasn't a total collapse. We still got, I can't remember now, a few 100,000 votes, but that was because...
That's because people thought UKIP...
That's thought
Brexit,
the job was done.
Job done. What are they there for now?
Yeah, which it wasn't. Nothing could be farther than the truth. It isn't done. But we took the party from nowhere to having 554 candidates. So if you have got a UKIP candidate in your locality, vote for them, because they will be standing up for Brexit, they'll be standing up for controls on immigration, they'll be standing up for an economy that works for everybody so that people can have a home and a job. They can't deliver it overnight. They haven't got the power to do that. But what you're saying is, this is what I believe in, and I'm giving my vote to somebody who believes in these things, so I can show my support to the political establishment and to the elite in this country. And that's what you need to do. You've got to rebel. And you can only rebel against the establishment by voting UKIP. And just a last note on the mainstream media, I got a text on my phone, would I go on the BBC and talk about the election results on the 4th of May?
So, day after the election.
Yeah, day after the election. So what I'm going to do is get back to them and say, I'll do a deal with you. You have me on before election day so that I can tell people why they should vote UKIP, and then I'll come and talk to you about the result afterwards. Because all they're asking me on there for is because they expect it's going to be a bad result and they want to give me a kick in, that's all.
Yeah.
But I hope it won't be a bad result. I hope it'll be much better than what what they expect. I mean, there are certain places where I think we do very well. Here in Havering, where we had 6 or 7 councillors last time, we want to get those re-elected. We're running councillors in Rochdale. We're running councillors in Bolton. We're running them all around the country. And giving those people, that's all we've ever done, it's all I've ever done, is give people who agree with the things that I'm saying and what my party's saying the opportunity to vote for us. Because it will be so easy for us to do nothing. Why are we making an effort? We're making the effort, I think the same reason you do this is because you feel you have to.
Yeah.
Well, if people want you to stick your head above the parapet and do something, the least they can do is go out and put a cross on a piece of paper.
Good luck.
Thank you, Tommy.
I just want to say a personal thank you to every single person who supported me. I couldn't bring you these videos without your support. We have no big funders, no big donators. So this is literally by you, for you. So I want to say a personal thank you. And if anyone else who wants to keep up to date with what we're doing, we've got plenty of exciting things coming up now. I've gone independent. You can do so at tommyrobinson.online. Thank you.